A rough draft. We don't really see ourselves in her so much. She might be the equivalent to an idea for a story. The germ of a story is even a more precise way of saying it. So, if great-grandma was 3.7 billion years ago, here's grandma 4.2 million years ago. This is Australopithecus afarensis. There was a fossil found in 1974 in Ethiopia. We call her Lucy. I've seen her in a museum. She walked upright, which we relate to, though I know a lot of people who don't walk upright or walk at all. I bet you do too. So God's own image, maybe this is closer to what God looks like. Maybe we're approaching a final draft, but I'm not so sure. Whoops. This is 2014. The world's tallest man and the world's smallest man meeting in London. The shorter one is, the short one, a much shorter one, is Chandra Bahadur Dangi. He's from Nepal, 21.5 inches tall, supports himself by making mats and head straps that his villagers can use to carry heavy loads around. And with him is Sultan Kozan, 8'3". He's a farmer from Turkey. And I was practicing it, and every time I said this next part, I just cried a little, so I'm going to try not to cry for you, Facebook and live humans in front of me. Kozan said, even though he is short and I am tall, we've had similar struggles throughout our lives. And when I look into Chandra's eyes, I can see he is a good man. Here I am again crying. I don't know why, that just gets me every time. When I look into his eyes, I can see that he's a good man. God created humans in her own image, and she too saw that they were good. We're good. That's a nice thought. Humans certainly come in a lot of varieties for us to say we're created in God's own image. This is a complicated notion. What image are we looking at here? This is a modern Hebrew word because I couldn't find the biblical Hebrew word, but it's tselem, which is the Hebrew word that we translate to image or likeness. Tselem, T-Z-E-L-E-M. We see this word when we hear God created humans in her own image. We also see it in 2 Kings where it refers to idols, specifically the idols that are being smashed of the god Baal. The Hebrew people destroy it in 2 Kings 11:18. They destroy these idols. So we could set aside the problem of having a jealous biblical God, which I find very problematic. But that's not really part of this. But isn't it interesting? Let's talk about it. It is a problem. Yeah, it's part of this, isn't it? Because we're created in God's own image, but our God is a jealous God, the Bible says. I don't know. I try so hard not to be jealous, not to have some ugly qualities. So, anyway, God created people in her own image, and that's that image word is equivalent to idol, to the idols that were created later in the Old Testament. What's an idol but an attempt to create a likeness that can be regarded and appreciated out of reverence for the original that it's based on? So God made a bunch of idols, and I'm looking at them, and that suddenly makes more sense. Nobody here looks like anybody else, so we can't look like, it's a logical issue, right? We can't be in God's image if we're all different. But we can be idols God created to adore. We can be like little symbols that God wanted to love and adore. Yeah.
I think we're...
Thank you, Paul.
I think where it says made in his image, it's not talking about the manifest. It's talking about the unmanifest, the spirit. We all have that creative image.
Yeah.
We're all creators.
But you know what, LB? You got to do a lot of mental gymnastics from the language to get to that. It says we're created in his own image. All this stuff you just applied to it is like...
Well, but also if you look at everything that's created
Yeah.
as one of those mirror balls from the disco thing, and every fragment of it is different because it reflects a different way. And that's the way we are, but we're all part of the same Godhead, the same beingness.
Yeah.
And so we just refract a different way, but that doesn't detract from the fact that we're all still that image.
Yeah.
Because that image is so much bigger than we can even imagine.
Beautifully put. And we all wrestle with this language, and we all sort of make the sense of it we can. Yes.
Well, to go a step further from what she was saying, I think that contributes to the idea that God is out there somewhere and not within each of us. And I think that's the key that you try to look to as far as in the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
He's not out there somewhere. He's within each of us.
Yes.
So the image is what is within each of us, not out. And I think that's what has led to a great deal of misconception, in my opinion, as to who he or she may be.
Beautiful. Yes, that's so well put. And we use this word image now to mean like a photograph is an image of somebody, and that's a little different than Zelum, this idea of kind of a reproduction and idol sort of. So the way language has evolved to mean, for image to mean a picture doesn't necessarily represent image the way it's...
Unless you're a Mennonite.
Unless you're a Mennonite, you can't have a doll with a
an
face
old school Mennonite, and they don't believe in taking pictures because that's creating an image. And the Indians sometimes didn't like it, and some other peoples around the world don't like it because they think that you steal their spirit when you take a picture. So there's a lot of innate inside of us feelings about that we're not always aware of.
That's a really good point. Cultural differences and how we regard images. You talk about Mennonites. Amish dolls are created without faces. They're featureless, like humanoid shapes. But there's the idea of certain people who do think that you're stealing their soul if you take their picture. Certain people that think that it's a graven image that's unholy too, so shouldn't take their picture for that reason. But my basic construction here is that God makes creation, and through idols, creation creates God right back. We make likenesses out of adoration and reverence, and I kind of think maybe that's possibly what this image business is. I've got some paper here in the room and some crayons. I thought while we talk you might want to doodle a little bit and draw your idea of God. Maybe we'll share that at the end and see what we come up with. Your images of God. You don't have to, but if you want to, there's on the middle table there. And at home, I told you in advance, if you don't have a crayon, it's your own darn fault. Okay. This, of course, is the creation of Adam, the Sistine ceiling fresco painted by Michelangelo from 1508 to 1512. He took 4 years on it, so if your picture of God isn't as good by the end of our talk, if you only had 4 more years, you'd be fine. Incidentally, when I was doing a little research for this talk, I found that Michelangelo's main source for this may have been an image that his friend had in a cameo, and that image was Augustus Caesar riding side saddle on a Capricorn, which is a horned goat. So, do you see it? the source image for this was Caesar on a Capricorn. My God would think that was cool. As a side note, some people see it right away, but this is also, Michelangelo was somebody who was very much into anatomy and would do dissections of cadavers. And this, do you see what I'm pointing to here? It's a brain, right? You could see the feet are like the brain stem, and there's a frontal lobe that God is sort of coming out of. I love that for our talk because this is a creative expression from the brain, which is our creator-given instrument for making stuff like this. And some people also see it as a uterus. So, but I can't say uterus at church.
Definitely not.
Oh wait, I've been given permission. So, but Michelangelo knew brains and uteruses. He checked them out live and in person. Some of us are better at drawing than others of us. Some are better writers, and some have other ways we express ourselves creatively. And these can range from fixing an engine to making a roast. I can't make a roast. It's always terribly dry when I try to make a good roast. Let's not pass the microphone. Let's just holler, and I'll repeat it for Facebook. What are some ways you're creative? How do you create? Yes. Writing. Writing. Oh, fellow writers, my people. Who else? Yeah.
Restoration.
What is it? Restoration.
Taking something that is like unlivable and making it livable.
Taking something that's unlivable and making it livable. This is Brenda talking. She was just fixing the bubbler, the water fountain outside the door here. So, restoration indeed. Yes, you too?
Yeah, my house is an art project, which is why it's taking me forever to get it done, because it's an art project, and, you know...
LB saying her house is an art project that's taking forever to get done.
We built a wall so that I can paint a tree up to a 12-foot ceiling, and
Oh my
I've got
gosh.
clouds on my ceiling. And
She's painting a 12-foot tree on a wall.
someday.
Hey, Keats, how do you create? How are you creative?
Well, I draw a bunch and
He draws a bunch. Keats is my son. He's 9 years old yesterday. What's that?
I just have a lot of ideas.
Just has a lot of ideas. Where do those ideas come from?
Oh, my head.
Where's your head come from?
Oh,
God. Okay. Well, I did not plant that idea. I thought it would be me. That's a mother for you. Children are another way we create. There's too much to say about the topic of creation for the length of time we have. I realized that when I was sort of getting my ideas together. So I'm just going to offer a few notions, some food for thought. We'll open it up to discussion too. Here in Unity, we think God is present in all people and things. If God's in me, and God's in you, and God's in this podium, and the air around us, the joke's on us if we literally believe we're mirror images of her. Why do we have different color, skin, and hair? Why are we different heights and weights? We must be some other kinds of images, as you two were rightfully saying. Maybe we're the idols that God made so she could adore us, and maybe in everything we create, we do the same to her. Maybe we're happy little accidents that God finds a way to work with, or maybe we're perfect and deliberate. Who thinks they might be an accident, and who thinks they might be deliberate? Or a little of both, maybe.
Definitely.
accident.
You're an accident? My son says he's an accident. We'll talk about that later.
Knows that for sure.
Oh, if God got the ball rolling with our initial creation, it seems at some point we took over. We ate this instead of that, and our bodies reflected those choices. We curled or straightened or cut or grew our hair. We got tattoos. Maybe we straightened our teeth. We read this instead of that. We studied this instead of that. We associated with this person instead of that. We believed this instead of that. We may have started out as God's creation, but we became our own from the moment we made our first choice. How are we actually in the image of God? I would suggest it's because we are creators. Like God, we make things. Later today, I'm going to make potato soup, pretty much the way my mom taught me, with some variations of my own. And you love potato soup? Nice. A vote from the back for potato soup. If it's like every one of the other times I made potato soup, I'll see that it's good, and my sons will see they'd rather have Hot Pockets, right, Keats? He's says right.
But I actually do like your potato.
Oh, but he actually does like my potato soup. I believe we're also in the image of God because we have the power to assess and evaluate. God created humans in her own image, and she saw that we were good, right? I create potato soups in the image of other potato soups I've known and loved, and I see that it's good, while my husband sees that he's on keto and won't touch it, and my sons will never know if it's good because they probably won't try it, although Keith says otherwise. Nevertheless, I keep tweaking, adding paprika and celery salt, stirring in shredded cheese. My nature is to see good and try to make it even better. Which reminds me of something. The preamble to the Constitution. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. That's always kind of bugged me because there's no such thing as more perfect. Is there? There's perfect, and there's short of perfect. And once you've reached perfect, you've arrived. No more need to try to perfect it. God saw that we were good. She didn't go so far as to say we were perfect, and that's why she keeps shaking celery salt into the pot. We're good, but we could be more perfect. A thought.
Well, more perfect, everything is due to cause and effect. I think what they were thinking was there is no finite thing going on here. So to make it more perfect, knowing that it will continually be evolving.
Okay, so the notion that's being presented is that it's more perfect because it's constantly evolving, always changing.
I think that's the key.
That's the key. Well said. Thank you. You always, by the way, have the best things to say. This is Dan. He always has such good observations about things because he's super smart.
Sharon, you have to put sour cream in your potato soup.
Oh, sour cream in the potato soup. There we go. It's more perfect that way. Through our creative acts, we're always aiming to be more perfect, whether we're trying to be more beautiful or we're trying to be more perfectly atrocious or jumbled or heartbreaking or profane. Here's a good example. A detail from Guernica by Pablo Picasso. It doesn't really look like a perfect representation of a horse, does it? Because it's not. It's a representation of war and trauma and how it twists and destroys things. So it's in a way it's a much more perfect representation of a horse than a photograph would be. There's more suffering here than a photograph of a horse could evoke. I think we also create through ourselves or through art or any other act. Whoops. I'm not used to non-Macs to PCs, so. To leave an artifact of ourselves behind. Some artifacts are more temporary. The more I tinker with my mom's potato soup, the more my mom leaves it. The more it's not her potato soup anymore. Something like this, Easter Island figures, we feel are very lasting. We might even imagine they're permanent, though if we think of great-grandma as an amoeba, maybe we rethink that, right? Is anything permanent? Through art, though, and through other creations, we can stick around after our corporeal bodies leave us, though we recognize death as merely a transition and yet another version of ourselves, even more perhaps in the image of God. Here's what some artists have to say about creation. Just food for thought before we sort of add our own thoughts and as you finish your pictures. Rumi said, "Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth." Isn't that a nice quote? It's about art being just our way of telling the story, which is unique in all the world. I am enough of an artist to draw freely on my imagination, says famous artist Albert Einstein. But he saw himself as a creative and somebody who lived a life of the mind and a life of imagination. Maya Angelou, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. It's like love. The more you practice it, the more you have. Martha Graham, dancer, modern dancer. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there's only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. If you block it, It will never exist through any other medium and will be lost. She's a dancer, so we can see that with dance, but I can see it with my writing. In that moment, the word that pops into my head that's probably based on my influences from that morning or from what I thought of the coffee I drank, or that moment in time is captured, just like in dance, even though it's captured on a page. And you're drawing pictures right now, you might have done a different, crayon stroke in a different moment, right? Did you have a thought, Dan?
Yeah, it's like when you're
Oh, here comes the mic. You must be caught.
when you're a teacher and you encourage people to read.
Yeah.
Why reading is so important, because your brain absorbs all those words, even though you don't know it. When you need to say something and you're not sure what word fits, your brain knows because it's something it has already seen.
Right.
And I think that's why reading and being open to so many different things is so important. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to say is, and I just wrote about this in my master gardening thing, was why my favorite artist is Monet, because as an impressionist painting, there were no finite lines. He knew how to go outside of what was traditionally considered structure, of being the line that we would only go this far. Yeah. And that whole idea of impressionistic painting led others to the idea of what later became, in America even, the idea of that Emerson talked so much about, as far as transformation, moving to beyond what you think you know. Yeah. And I think that was really critical. So with all of those that you're referring to now, I think that was important to what they were trying to say, was to move beyond what you think you know.
Yeah. And I like that notion of the storehouse of knowledge and words and ideas that we get from reading and from exposing ourselves to other thinkers. I know, I'm the oldest person in the newsroom I work in, and I've been reading for longer and associating with words for longer, and sometimes I'll pull out a big vocabulary word, and they have to pull back the reins and say, that's really not the best word for our readers, is it? So I try to slip them in there, because I have this storehouse that I like and I'm proud of and I think is expressive and good, and I work it when I can. So here's some more quotes. Brene Brown. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. You have to be a little bit vulnerable. Even for the silly drawings you're doing, you have to be a little bit vulnerable to be willing to make the attempt, right? When I write a poem, I write some words, and they're so stupid. Really, the first words I put down are so ridiculous and wrong and not where I want to go at all. And I find myself just crossing them out and obliterating them because I can't even stand to look at them. They're so not right. And so I write toward the rightness. But you got to make those stumbles to get to the good stuff. Just like my editor corrects my stumbles when I'm using puffery and silly language instead of communicating clearly. Really, that's the other half of that equation. This is Banksy. I don't have a picture of him because we don't really know what he looks like. Graffiti is one of the few tools you have if you have almost nothing. And even if you don't come up with a picture to cure world poverty, you can make someone smile while they're having a piss. Am I allowed to say piss? Okay. So that's Banksy is a graffiti artist. And I've been given the approval to say piss. And here's a familiar artist. Ernie or Keats, who's this? Bob Ross. We don't make mistakes, just happy little accidents. I think is a nice notion to, as a room full of what's probably a bunch of happy little accidents and maybe pure intention, I think that's a nice place to leave these quotes.
I watch him.
My son just said, I'm a happy little accident. Okay, Brenda, yes.
I watch him a lot because he's got a lot of, not only his paintings, but as he's painting, he's got a.
Hold on 1 second. We're going to get you mic'd. Brenda's saying something worth hearing here.
Bob Ross, is on PBS on 10:30 every morning,
Oh,
and not only his paintings is inspirational, but he talks as he's painting, and he's got a lot of inspirational
yeah,
things that he talks about,
that's right.
and it's very uplifting.
It's interesting because I think it's the art that gives them the insight. So he says things that are just like, it's so zen to hear him talk about, like making something from like your least little mark that seems to be errant, and then you can make something beautiful out of it. And I don't paint or draw or anything creative like that. I'm purely a writer, and I can't even really draw a condensing stick figure, but I love to watch Bob Ross because he talks about how to make worlds, and he talks about how to make them with grace and love, and I think that's amazing. Okay, so let's open it up. I'd kind of like to have you guys share your pictures. Does anybody have a picture they can share with our Facebookers?
Just have a little heart.
A little heart. Okay.
But I have words that go with it.
All right, let's mic you up. I want to hear your words. Some people chose, like I would, to write instead of to draw.
Okay. God, love within our souls, the Holy Spirit within in meditation, this is who guides me. And with wisdom, love, a smile, kindness, God is an invisible force, but felt all good. Can't read my own writing here. Well, anyway.
Well, that's
The
beautiful.
crayon didn't write too good.
Well, I gave
Anyway,
crayons.
I know what it is. Creativity is like love to me. The more you give it away, the more you receive.
Nice. Creativity is like love. The more, and that was one of the quotes too. The more you try to create, the more you have to create. Anybody have anything they want to share? Picture or words? James is willing. Come up here, James, and show.
Okay. Hello.
He's on his way, camera.
Can you read it?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Did you see it?
Turbo love. I don't know if they can see it or not.
Let me look on the other side.
No, you have to hold it in front of the.
Okay, it's coming, Facebook.
Not really. I don't know. Just
It's
says
beautiful.
God created in her image, but actually started out with turbo love in the middle.
Turbo love is
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else have one to share? Well, we could talk about this after the fact. I don't really have. You want to do something real quick? What do you want to say, Keats, about creativity?
Oh, creativity has many cultures.
Yeah, a lot of cultures have different kinds of creativity, for sure. All right, well, it's a big topic, and I would like to talk about it some more the next time I'm up here, whenever that may be. Oh, LB's got a closing thought, perhaps.
Well, we have lots of time. I didn't do a picture because there's no way for me to put anything on paper that would be my concept of God.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to put everything in it, which would be kind of like one of Wendy's mosaics, maybe.
Yeah.
But probably not that talented. She's amazing. But
So you weren't willing to do one of your disco ball panels.
no, that would have been way detailed. That would have taken hours and hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours and hours. But in my concept,
Sure.
but it just when God is infinite, and in our finite minds, we can only point to the infinite. We can experience the infinite.
Yeah.
But we can only point others. We can't, there's no way to explain the infinite from the finite. It has to be experienced. And so what we do is we we look toward the infinite and try to point people toward it so they know there's something out there that they need to go find, and that's the only way you can get there is inside yourself, is finding the infinite. So that to me is the concept of God, is pointing toward the infinite, and you can't put that in words or pictures.
Gotcha. Well, now, I try to put it in words, and a lot of people try to put it in images or in dance or in other forms, so that's sort of two different ways of looking at it. Can't even come close, don't even try, versus try all the time and probably...
I'm not saying don't try.
Oh, I thought you didn't try.
Well, I didn't put anything on a picture, but in my mind, I could see
Yeah.
what I feel. But
So LB's saying in her mind she could see what she feels, but she couldn't translate it. Art, of course, is trying to translate the ineffable, so that inchoate sort of thoughts that we might have. So, yeah.
I have something to say real quick. We were talking about perfection and, do we feel perfect? But in in just kind of my belief system is that we are perfect. We're the perfect expression of our current state of consciousness. Yeah. And we will continually evolve and change that state of consciousness, which means that, we will maintain perfection. Yeah. And it's interesting in the creation mythology, it's, God created this and this and this and this, and then created man and said it was, or mankind, and said it was very good. But everything else said, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is very good. So I always find that interesting.
Pat yourself on the back.
I'm going to pass the microphone to Eric here and let him read what he wrote this. They just wrote this, and it says...
Hold the microphone up to your mouth. There you go.
much love and peace on earth forever, and to become one of a family.
Beautiful.
Amen.
That's a beautiful.